Hey guys, it's Eric here at Farpoint Farms. Tonight, we're going to get into our continuing series of disaster preparedness videos, and tonight's video is labeled something along the lines of why none of this stuff matters in a disaster. And here's why. We're going to jump right into it. Power. If you can't power this equipment, none of it's going to matter. And that is a situation that happened massively during Hurricane Helene. Repeaters that didn't work. Radios that were silent because no one was there. They didn't have the energy to power those things up. We all dream about how we're going to be able to use two-way radios to communicate with each other and to keep the lines of information flowing. But if we don't have power, we aren't communicating. That happened a lot during Helene and more so during Hurricane Fran. I've lived through both of those events, and some of the stuff I want to share with you tonight is observations and lessons that I learned the hard way during both. Now, the thing to think about when we think about electricity is that it's not just this that we need to care about. Having a light that stays on is a comfort. It's a wonderful thing. Being able to keep our food from spoiling in the freezer or the refrigerator is a great comfort and saves us a lot of money. Being able to communicate is great. But we need to think more along the lines of what happens in a disaster during the wintertime. Many houses have forced air heat. Now, it doesn't matter if it's all electric, which definitely won't be working, but people will live in the assumption that a gas furnace is going to turn on when the power goes out, and it doesn't. Without the blower to force that air through your home, the system will not turn on. So you could freeze to death with a full tank of propane outside, and that is a situation that has unfortunately happened. So we need to think about powering things like that in a disaster as well. Both Fran and Helen happened during the summertime, but I have survived minor events during winter storms where, freezing ice brings trees down on power lines. You can usually make it 24 to 36 hours with the residual heat in your home, but beyond that, you run into some serious risks. So tonight we're going to take a look at 3 different ways that we can power our equipment. The first, the least expensive, won't take care of heat, it won't take care of getting water out of a well, and it won't take care of many of the comforts like this equipment here, but it will keep you somewhat informed and it will give you a little bit of comfort, a little bit of relief from a very scary situation. The first type is batteries. Batteries are the most simple and cheapest option you have. Go to Lowe's or Home Depot, pick up a 24-pack of AA or AAA batteries, throw them in the closet, and when the power goes out, you can power up something like this, a little AM/FM pocket radio or even an AM/FM shortwave radio. And they even make some scanners, the old Radio Shack scanners, handheld. They're analog only, but those two can be bought with AA batteries. You can fill them up. The downsides, well, there's a lot of them, unfortunately. They're not going to power your well pump. They're not going to power a heater. They can power some lights. I had an old 6-volt lantern battery, the dry cell type, if you want to stock some batteries and have one of those. And it's a little hard to read by, but at least you'll be able to work if you need to by the dim light that those provide for a while. The downsides to batteries, again, are that those batteries don't last a very long time, especially in the sense of lighting. Flashlights, AA or D-size battery flashlights, you can expect about 8 hours of runtime out of those before they dim out. And if it's an LED bulb, they just shut off. They never really dim. They just work until they don't, which can be unfortunate if they turn off right when you need them the most. The other problem with batteries is you bought that 24-pack, you put it on the shelf, and then you forgot about it because, well, there's no disasters. 3 years later, when you go to grab that pack, they have run down, they no longer function properly, or in worst case, they get corrosion in them and then they just no longer function at all. Even worse than that, the worst thing you can do is put batteries into something like this and put it in your drawer and say, well, I got a radio in case the power goes out, because a lot of times that battery will corrode and actually damage or ruin the radio inside of it. And you don't have anything, which is very unfortunate. So that's your cheapest option, but it's also the least popular in my personal opinion because of the issues that you can run into. Now, the second one is this, and that is the gas generator, the most popular option by far. Gas is great. It can run, you can get gas generators from like 1,000 watts all the way up to 1,000 watts, 1.5 kilowatt, and even larger if you go into home house units. Now, after Hurricane Fran, I had nothing, right? Fran came through. I was a young man. I had no generator whatsoever, so all my food spoiled. I had no way to run a fan. It was, extremely hot in the summer in Raleigh. it was a very unfortunate time. So I vowed to myself, hey, I'm not going to be caught without some kind of way of getting power. So I went out and bought a generator after the storm was over with. And it's this one here. I'll show you a little clip of it. This was an ancient 70s model generator. It was about 3,000 watts. And it was $50 broken, but hey, so what? It was a generator. If you're on an extremely tight budget, like I always am, you're going to be wanting to look for those deals like that. Now, I was able to get this generator back up and running, and that served me all the way up through 2017. Now, you've seen my channel, you know that I reviewed some newer style of generator. Those old generators like that one I just showed you, they got some pretty serious downsides. They're very loud, which is not always the best thing. You kind of want to be quiet sometimes. You don't need the whole world knowing that you're the guy with power on. The other half of that is they're hugely inefficient. They'll burn through a tank of gas very quickly. And in a major disaster like Helen, getting more gas was a huge problem. So you kind of got what you got, and that's all you're going to get. And those generators are going to use that up a lot quicker. Now, the newer style generator like this one here that we have, they're great because they can offer you more fuel efficiency and in a quieter package. They also come in sizes all the way down from 1,000 watts all the way up to 1.5 kilowatts, probably in that range too. The sweet spot, of course, being the 3,000 to 4,000 range. The one I have also has the ability to run off of 2 different types of fuel, which is a really nice added bonus, both gasoline and propane. Now, when I say gas generator, I also am talking about diesel generators like whole house generators, propane, natural gas, and gasoline. I'm just using gas as a generic term in this sense. These generators are great. They will power up things like your lighting. They'll certainly allow you the operation of all of these radios in both in receive and transmit. Put enough juice out to do that. More importantly, they'll save you a bunch of money on the backside by allowing the food in your freezer not to spoil. And if they're large enough and they're set up through a transfer switch, they can backfeed into your home and keep your well pump on. Very few of these will allow for you to keep a water heater warm if it's an electric water heater or things of that nature, or run electric heat in your house. Electric heat especially, I don't know that there's any generators that are capable of doing that, but I'm sure they're out there. But you even have whole home generators like base and generators that will do that to some extent anyway. The downsides to that are fuel. It doesn't matter if it's a fuel efficient or inefficient, at some point fuel runs out. The second downside to that is that if you're not someone who's keeping on top of things, one of 2 scenarios, or likely both, are going to play out for you. The storm hits, the generator that you bought for the last storm still has fuel in it from the last storm, and that was 3 years ago. No matter how many times you pull on that thing, it's not going to start. Gas goes bad. Even with fuel stabilizer, after a long enough period of time, gas goes bad. It also, because modern gas has ethanol mixed in with it, causes corrosion and crud to build up, varnishes and such, to the carburetor system on those generators. And I can tell you from experience, during a hurricane or right after one, when the power is out and there's no water, it's not a great time to be disassembling engines to try to figure out how to get them working again. Covering yourself in oil and gas and varnish and stuff like that, carb cleaner, and not having a way to rinse your hands off, that's not good for your health. So if you're going to have a gas generator, the 2 things you're going to want to do is you're going to want to maintain it. Take it out every few months and run it. Better yet, and this is something I recommend to everyone, if you have a generator, run that thing until it's out of gas before you put it away. That way there's no chance for varnish or damage to be done. It's just as clean and dry as it was the day you bought it. Run it out of fuel, put it away. As far as gas cans, the same issue applies. If you don't have lawn equipment and you're not refilling your gas cans a couple times a season, well, that gas has been sitting there for a long time too, and it goes bad. You can take the cap off and smell it. It's got a really bad odor to it. You'll know that that fuel has gone bad. Diesel also goes bad, but in a different way. Diesel has a much longer shelf life, but it can get like mold in it. It's like a fuzz or a bacteria that grows in there, and that can gum up lines and cause problems. Also, during extreme winter times like right now, they can get gel. They gel up, and then it becomes difficult to pour, or the generator won't fire up because it's not getting a consistent flow to the injectors. So generators do have a downside as well. They are the cheapest option for like powering up and keeping your stuff going. But if not maintained, if not looked after, not cared for, they will leave you in the dark more often than not. And I saw this firsthand, generators that were just gummed up and not wanting to start. and also generators that ran out of fuel because, well, we had 5 gallons, but half of it I had used on my mower. I meant to get it filled up, then the storm hits. So we're stuck with 2.5 gallons. That'll keep you good for a day or two. But then Hurricane Fran was a 14-day event without power. Hurricane Helen was 9 days. There's no amount of rationing that's going to keep your food from spoiling during those kind of durations. And oftentimes people underestimate just how bad a situation is and tend to run generators quite a bit the first 48 hours before they realize that this might take a while. And that leads to the third type of power option. It's the one, if you've been following my channel, I've gone over quite a few times here, and that is solar. And solar, like a lot of people are just like, nah, I'm doing solar. Solar has come so far in the last 15 years that it is almost silly not to have at least some type of solar power on your property, if possible. You can build a system for less than $100 that will power up this kind of equipment both ways, two-way, transmittal, 20 amp out, no problem. You're using a used car battery, a single 100-watt solar panel, and an inexpensive charge controller. That is peace of mind that never needs to be refilled. It never goes stale. It just is there. You literally, oh no, the power's out, and it looks like it's not coming back on. Take the battery out of, this car over here, put it on the ground, hook it up to this charge controller, plug the panel in, face it towards the sun, and then hook your little inverter up to it so that you can run it. Less than $100, I've got a video on that, how to build it exactly. I will put it in a link down below. Now, modern systems are really cool, and again, 15 years, the technology has changed so much just in the last 5. You can buy a solar generator, a solar power station like this one here, and you can really move up into an all-in-one solution. These have lithium batteries, they have built-in charge controllers, and they have built-in inverters. Many of these can handle 800 to 1600, some even up to 3000 watts output, all 120. You can move into the 240 range, but that's a considerably larger expense. And they allow 400 to 800 watts of incoming solar power. The cool thing about them is that they also will charge off of 120 AC. So in the event of Helene, I was charging the house off of main solar array that we had, and occasionally, to keep my deep freeze, which is in a different part of in another building, I would recharge the solar inverter there off of a generator. And it took 30, 40 minutes to recharge one of these things, and then it would run another 24 hours off of that and solar mixed. So a really cool option. Now, while solar is more expensive up front, if you're going to get into the same kind of power consumption that a gas generator has, the benefits are it's never going to need fuel again. So every dollar you spend up front, you don't have to spend along the way. You're never going to go out and press the button on a solar generator and say, uh-oh, the carburetor's gummed up, because it doesn't have one. These units just work. If you've watched my channel for any amount of time, you know that I have a 1200 watt array that I built myself during the pandemic, and what a learning experience it was. That system kept us alive during Helene in ways that it made our lives comfortable, it made our lives semi-normal, and it was the greatest thing. No noise, no fuel, no fumes. It was so perfect. 1200 watts ran my deep freezer, my refrigerator. It kept the lights on in my house. It allowed us to power up a TV if we wanted to watch something, just to take our minds off the situation we were in. Now, my system wasn't strong enough to run a well pump, but that's a different story. We'll get into that. And I couldn't have run the whole house heater. We have electric heat. Of course, I do have propane heat here for wintertime, and we do have a wood stove. But wood is something that just people needs to, it's kind of fallen out of fashion, but wood is not a bad way to heat a house, and as a supplemental, it's not really a primary way anymore. So those are the 3 ways that I can tell you that you could power your home during a disaster. The simplest but least effective would be regular old-fashioned AA batteries and D batteries. The second most cost-effective, but probably not the greatest option when you really get down into the details of it, is a gas, diesel, or propane-fired generator. And the best, but probably most expensive in startup costs, would be a solar array. Now, I'll leave links to some of the videos I've made on some of these products so that you can kind of get a better idea of what you're looking at, both performance-wise and cost-wise for some of these options. And in our next video, the next videos in this series on disaster preparedness, we're going to get into probably one of the more sombering parts of disaster preparedness, something that, I don't focus on prepping or survivalist stuff here on the channel, but since we're going through all the stuff that I went through together, I wanted to talk to you about water. Water being a very, very important part of all of our lives. and the ability to get water during a disaster is so critical. Now, I'm blessed to live here on a property with a spring. We'll get into that in the next video. But for many of you, water and food, having a little bit on hand can go a long way. Hope you're enjoying the series. I hope you stick around for the next part, and I'll see you next time. Take care.